Hello everyone, and welcome to the fourth part of the SDL 2.0 tutorial videos. In this video we're going to be creating our texture class and finally putting a texture onto the screen. So for that we will need the SDL Image library, and if you Google SDL 2.0 image, it should be the first link there. So if you go to that, we will need the development libraries, and we are going to need this one right here, so the Visual C++ one. Once you have it downloaded, I have it downloaded right here, you can just extract that folder to the same folder that you extracted the SDL 2.0 library. So I have it in C, so if I go to C, and I have my SDL 2.0.5 here and image 2.0.1. So once you have that set up, we would just need to change the project properties. So if we go here, right click on the project, and in properties we need to go to VC++ directories and include it there. So right underneath SDL 2.0 we can go to C, image, and include. So now we have this, and next up are the library files. So if we go to the linker, and in the linker we have our SDL 2.0 library here. We just need to add the image as well, so let's add that image library, and we of course will add the x86 one, and then OK. And finally in input we will include the SDL 2_image.lib. And then now that we have all this set up, we can hit OK and then apply. And you will need the DLLs for that as well, and you will find the DLLs in the lib and x86. As you can see, there are multiple DLLs here. So for all these DLLs we need to include them into our debug folder, and we will get to the debug folder by opening the folder, the project in Explorer, and then we can go back to where the solution is, and in debug we need to copy our DLLs in here. And there are so many DLLs because each DLL is to different extensions, so TIFF files, PNGs, JPEGs, and so on, and as well as the SDL 2_image DLL. Now that we have all of these copied over, we are ready to get started. So we can close that now. And there are a few edits to our graphics class that we need to do. First, we would need to, let me just close the website. And the first thing we will need to do is change our graphics class a little bit. What we will need is an SDL_renderer pointer, and we'll call this one mRenderer, as well as a few new functions. One of them being SDL_texture pointer, and we will call this one load texture. And this will take an std string called path. For that we will need to include string, and in graphics we will also need to include SDL_image.h. Now that we have all this, we can go on to create the rest of our functions. We will need a function as well called ClearBackBuffer, and this will be called every at the beginning of every frame to clear our canvas that we're working with. And this function will be a void, as well as another void function called drawTexture. And this will take an SDL texture point. And we'll call this one text for now. And this will be called by every class that we need to draw texture from, and give it a texture to draw it onto the back buffer. And this should be it. That should be it for all the functions that we'll need for now. And we can go now to our graphics.cpp to initialize the image library. So if we go down here, we first will need to create our renderer. So we'll say our renderer is going to be equal to SDL underscore create renderer. And this will take our window and -1 as well as SDL underscore renderer underscore accelerated. So this render will be hardware accelerated, so it can make use of our graphics card. And we'll say if the render is equal to null. So just like here, we will handle any errors that we may face. So if our render is equal to null, then we'll printf render creation error. And we'll give it a string and a line break. And for that, we will pass it SDL underscore get error, just like we did before. And then return false. Next up, so if our render was created, we will set the render draw color. So SDL underscore set render draw color, and this will take our renderer, as well as 0xFF, 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 so just a white color and an alpha of 1 as well. Okay, now that we have this, we just need to initialize our image library. And to initialize it, we'll set a flags variable, which will be equal to image underscore init underscore png. So the image that we're going to be working with is just going to be a PNG for now. And so we'll take that and initialize it. So if not image underscore init and the flags, so flags and then bitwise and flags. So if this becomes false, then we are going to find out that there was an error initializing image. So we'll say print f image initialization error, and for that error, and for that we'll pass it a string and a line break. And this time we will do image underscore get error. Okay, now if there was an error, we'll return false as usual, and then this will be it. So now we just initialized our renderer, we set its color, and initialized our image library. Next up, we will deal with the new functions that we created, which will be these 3. So first one being SDL underscore texture pointer graphics load texture, and this will take an std string, which will be the path of our texture. So we'll say SDL underscore texture pointer text, texture pointer, and text will start off being null. And this will be the texture that we return all the way at the end. So we will also need an SDL surface pointer. We'll call this one surface, and it's going to be equal to image underscore load whatever we are given by the path. So path under dot c underscore string, just to convert it to a constant char pointer. So if the surface is null, then there was an error trying to load this image. So we'll say if the surface is equal to null, then printf image load error, and we'll say the path was a string and the error was another string, and then a line break. So for our strings, we'll pass it the path dot c underscore string, as well as the error that we just encountered, which will be image underscore get error. Okay, so if we couldn't load the surface, then we just need to return null for this texture. And since our text is null, we'll just say return whatever is in text right now. Next up, our text is going to be, so if the image did load correctly and our surface is not null, we can go on to create our texture. So SDL underscore create texture from surface, and for that we will pass it our renderer, as well as our surface. And then same idea, if the texture is equal to null, then there was a problem. So printf create texture error, and for that we will pass it SDL get error. And then return null. Well, we can return text, since text is still null. Okay, so if neither of these trigger and returns null, that means that our texture was created. And if our texture was created, we can just return text. But of course, since we created the surface, we need to free it. So SDL underscore free surface, and the surface will be just surface. Okay, now that we have this done, in the destructor we will probably need to do an image quit for the graphics. So we'll quit the image before SDL, as well as destroy our renderer. So we'll pass this one mRenderer and set our mRenderer to null. So this is just to clean up after everything that we've done. So we're just destroying the renderer and quitting the image library. Okay, so now that we have our load texture function, the next function that's up is ClearBackBuffer. And this will be a very simple function. All this would do is just, so void graphics ClearBackBuffer, and this will just say SDL underscore render render clear, and we'll say mRender. So this is just clearing our renderer. And finally, draw texture. So void graphics draw texture SDL underscore texture pointer text And for that, we'll do SDL underscore render copy. We'll pass it the renderer as well as the texture, and we'll leave the other two null for now. Okay, so now that we have a way to clear the render, we have a way to render a texture, we need to present that. So instead of doing an update window surface, now we'll just present the render. So we'll say SDL underscore renderer, render present, and this takes our renderer. Okay, so this should be it for the changes that we need to do for our graphics class. Now that we've done these changes, we need to go to the game manager and reflect on some of these changes. So now we don't need the parent and the child to test anymore. So we'll take these out. We'll clear them out of here and there, as well as the destructor, and from here as well. So now we have our graphics render. We need to do our graphics ClearBackBuffer. And between the ClearBackBuffer and the render, we can do all our draw calls. So for the draw calls, now we need to create our texture class. And the texture class will be very simple for now, but we'll expand on it later on. So add new item .h, and let's create our texture .h. So if not defined, underscore texture underscore h define underscore texture underscore h, and then end f, and then we'll say class texture. So for this class, we will be inheriting from game entity. So we will say include game entity, and we'll also need graphics, so let's include that as well. And in texture, let's inherit from that, so we'll do a public inheritance. And for our private variables, we will just have an SDL underscore texture pointer, which will be mTexture, or we can call it mText, and a graphics pointer, which will be mGraphics. And then for our public, we'll do the constructor as well as the destructor, and a virtual void render. And this is still virtual because we might want to inherit from the texture class later on if we want to create an animated texture class or so on. Okay, and this is all we're going to have for the purposes of this video in our texture.h. So let's create our texture.cpp. So texture, and in texture.cpp we will do the following. So include texture.h, and then for our constructor we'll say texture and let's in the constructor actually let's give it an std string, and we'll call this one path. So this will be the path for our texture. So we'll have it here, and then say all we would need to do, since we have our path now, is to get is to assign a value to graphics, and for that we'll say mGraphics is going to be equal to graphics instance, since it is a singleton. So we'll get the graphics that was initialized here in the game manager. And then once we have graphics in mGraphics initialized, we can assign our texture. So our texture is going to be equal to mGraphics load texture and whatever is in the path. Now for the destructor, we'll say SDL destroy texture, This will be our mText. And then mTexture, mText is going to be equal to null, as well as our mGraphics. Now for render, all it takes is just one line, so we'll say void render mGraphics, so texture render, and we'll say mGraphics draw texture, and will be our text, so mText. And this should be it for now for our texture. So let's look for a PNG that we can use, and for that we will look for since we're making a Galaga game, let's look for a Galaga sprite sheet. So Galaga classic sprite sheet. And let's get one of the sprite sheets. So let's say this one, view image, and we'll just drag this one to where our folder is. So our folder is right here. So in debug, well, let's create a new folder and call this one assets, and we'll keep all our assets in here, and then drag the PNG in there. For that, we'll just call it sprite sheet.png. Okay, so now that we have our sprite sheet in our debug folder, just keep in mind it's in the same folder that the exe is in, so in assets and then sprite sheet. And now we can give it a path to work with. So in game manager now, let's create our texture. So we don't need to include these two anymore, we can just include texture, since texture includes both graphics and game entity. And we'll say texture pointer mText. And then first we will need to be able to get the path for our exe, and SDL has a pretty helpful function to do that. So let's create a string down here. So SDL string path, and our path is going to start off being equal to SDL underscore get base path, and what this returns is our is the path to our exe. And with that, we will append where our texture is. So path.append assets underscore backslash forward slash spritesheet.png .png. And with that, we have our path for our texture. So we'll say mText is going to be equal to a new texture, and this will take our path. Of course, here we need to delete mText and set mText to null. Now that we have everything here set up, we can just draw mText. So we'll say mText render, and let's see how it goes. And there we go. So, and this is how you can draw a PNG in SDL. So this is using hardware acceleration, so it should be a lot faster than SDL 1 was, because in SDL 1 you used to blend the surface using a single texture onto the back buffer, but this one is hardware accelerated, so it should be it should have pretty good performance. And this should be it for this video. Now we have created our texture class. We can expand on it in the later videos. We will cover how to cut a piece of that image and render it separately, and with that we will be able to create our player. So these videos are already running pretty long. I really hope that this video helped you. If you have any comments, suggestions, or feedback, please leave them below. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.